do this. How are you feeling?
Yeah, my neck is still sore, but other than that, I'm recovering. So,
okay.
What do you do?
Did you have any sort of experience with this in terms of it wasn't like you had an car accident, but this wasn't like a near death kind of thing or anything?
No.
Not this time. Okay.
No.
Because you've had those in the past. I mean, that's kind of what got you interested in a lot of these topics that we're going to discuss here.
Yeah, I had a 3-day long out of body experience that I was fully conscious of myself, watching my human body going around interacting with people. And this was when I was, I think, 13 years old. And I just watched and observed from a distance like a balloon tied around the wrist of a kid. Just all day long, all night long. I was up in the corner of the room watching myself sleep, waking up the next day, going through my routine. And then on the third day, I popped back in my body.
Was this this was the surfing accident thing?
No, that happened when I was 17.
Oh, okay. So what happened at 13?
I went to bed one night. I woke up the next morning. I was outside my body.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't like you didn't have an injury or anything. It was just, it just happened randomly.
It just totally happened at random. And, but I do believe that there's destiny in everything. And, it changed the trajectory of my life completely. As I got older, I started having the ability to interpret dreams. I mean, amazing, like visual images of when people would tell me a dream. I said, wait a minute, I know what that means.
Yeah.
And I was able to tell them exactly what the message in the dream was.
Okay. So, but back when you were 13, because at that time, I think you said that you were bullied as a kid and you felt like you didn't belong.
Oh, absolutely.
In the world. So then after having that experience, did you feel like you belonged? And then if so, what was your purpose? Like, what did you feel like you were meant to do?
Well, first of all, I was bullied a lot when you imagine the kids used to call me Shirley Temple, which, she was a child actor in those days. And I had big curly hair and, I was
that old. I mean, that Shirley Temple was like 1930s or something, wasn't it?
Well, she was fairly popular into the 50s.
Oh, okay.
Her movies were still being made into the 50s. And so I was a child of the 50s. Yeah, I'm 70 years old, man.
Yeah. Okay. For some reason, I'm thinking Shirley Temple was like 20s and 30s, or was her career that long?
Her career was quite long, but her childhood career, it lasted for probably 5 or 6 years. And she made a lot of movies during that period of time. And so when I was a kid, Shirley Temple was still, movies that people watched. I mean, there were, I remember, I don't know if you remember The Lone Ranger. I was watching The Lone Ranger when I was a little boy.
Okay. I think I saw the reruns when I was a kid. Wasn't it black and white, right?
It was absolutely, everything was black and white in those days. So, yeah.
So they called you Shirley Temple because you had curly hair?
I had big, curly locks, and I was just an odd-looking kid, as a lot of kids are,
Yeah. So did you ever think of just like shaving your head or doing something different? Or
no. I mean, one of the things that you learn as you're going through life is resiliency is so important. And I think that it toughened me a bit, because if you're going to be bullied, it probably is not going to be one of those things. It's just going to be occasional. It's probably going to be that people are going to see things about you and they're going to either resonate with you. And I had friends in those days, but a lot of kids didn't like me just because of the way I looked. I was just not a typical looking kid. So
do you think that we're doing kids a disservice now by not allowing some of those things? Like it's so, because I worked in the schools for 17 years and there's all these anti-bullying programs, which,
right.
I mean, if you grew up in my era or your era, I mean, it probably to us, it made sense because the bullying was like, I mean, it could get out of control. It turned into hazing and get physical. People get beat up and psychologically. I mean, and then you see these school shooters. A lot of them say, "Well, they were bullied, so we need to curb bullying."
That recently happened, by the way. This most recent school shooter, they said that he was bullied relentlessly,
right,
at school. And I was stuffed in a trash can when I was 12 and a half years old, head first, by a bunch of kids.
That sounds gross.
It was That's just the kind of stuff I had to put up with. And, teachers really didn't do that much about it in those days. And of course,
Right.
kids were always kind of watching out. And if there wasn't anybody around, it was sort of like the Wild West on the playground. So,
And then if you tell a teacher, then you get labeled a tattletale or
a
whatever.
tattletale, right.
Yeah.
Teacher's pet.
Right. So it seems like, because like I think one of the biggest things that seems to be lacking now is that we're not teaching kids, like you said, how to be resilient and how to rise above those things. Like, okay, so you had funny looking hair, like who gives a shit? Like now you've written all these books and you're being interviewed on podcasts and TV shows and things like that. You're doing all these great things in your life. I mean, you could have just given up at 13 because of your hair, and that would be ridiculous.
I talked about my friend Robert Davi. I'm sure you're familiar with who Robert Davi is.
The actor, right?
Yes.
Is that the guy from Goonies?
Yes, that's the guy.
Yeah. Oh,
I
love
produced
that guy.
his radio show for a year, and we became very good friends.
Oh,
And, he was mentored by Frank Sinatra. You probably didn't know
Wow.
that. He told me the story.
yeah. I vaguely remember reading that somewhere. I think there was some connection because yeah. Doesn't he sing as well as act?
He is an amazing singer. He does. And if you go on the internet, you can find Davi sings Sinatra. It's amazing. You cannot literally tell the difference.
Yeah,
He's
because
an
I think
amazing talent.
he sings in Goonies, right? Doesn't he sing opera in Goonies?
I think he does. I think he does. I haven't
like-
seen the movie for a while. It's one of my favorite
Yeah.
movies, actually.
Oh.
It was filmed up here in Oregon, so.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've been to all the filming locations, the house and the
Yeah.
jail and all that
it's
stuff.
so cool. Yeah, it's a great
Yeah.
movie. Yeah.
But anyway, sorry. So yeah, Robert Davi. What about?
Well, here's the thing, and this is one of the things I was talking about is on my own podcast, which is Spooky Action at a Distance, and also Disrupt the Drift on YouTube, and BaronBaptiste.com is where you find this. But he had, as you can probably tell, even now in his life, he had terrible acne. And so he had like a very pitted face. But Frank Sinatra saw this spark of genius in him, and he's truly a brilliant man. He's a brilliant thinker as well as a very talented guy. And so today, look at how much billions of dollars goes into the complexion industry for kids that are worried about their pimples and how their face looks. And so, he wasn't one of those people that was bullied into submission. He wasn't one of those people that allowed that social pressure to shape and form his relationship with the world. He got out there. He got on stage. He's an amazing person. He directed a few major motion pictures in the last couple of years. So he's an amazing guy. But the idea that kids are bullies, I think that is a trickle-down effect for the most part from the family. Because children that are bullied in families, or children that are put up on pedestals, and some parents look at children, think they can do no wrong, and they'll defend them, to the very bitter end. Those are the kids that have a sense of privilege and mistreat other people. And so it's a lack of proper parental relationships that cause other kids to go out and be cruel. And usually it's a trickle-down effect, in my opinion. That's what I experienced throughout the course of my life.
Yeah, and sometimes it can be a something where they are unhappy with something with themselves. And so then they're projecting that out into the world. Like you see a lot of it now. There's a lot of hate, people that are just hateful on Twitter and or X or whatever it's called, all social media and, the mainstream media, whatever. Like people just, a lot of hate for this person. It seems like a lot of that is projecting something that they're unhappy with about themselves. That's
100%. 100% is projection. And you know what projection means? It means taking something you don't like about yourself and putting it on somebody else, and then taking out your frustration on somebody else, because taking out your frustration on yourself is kind of a dead end street. Kind of goes nowhere. You feel down, you're depressed, then you move toward different kinds of abuses, of yourself. And so, yeah, projection is a real thing. But I have to say that the bigger picture is that there are two forces at work in our lives. This is one of the things that I discovered when I was out of my body. It wasn't that I saw these forces at work until later on in my life, when I was separated from my own body, from my flesh. I was kind of drawn into this other dimension, I guess you could say, because I do believe that dimensions coexist side by side very closely. Otherwise, how could anybody have an out of body experience or a near death experience? There are dimensional qualities to our lives. And as when I came back into my body, I was very aware of having been out of it. And then I contemplated that, like, what the heck happened to me? Why did that happen to me? Now, before that happened to me, going back to when I was 10 years old, and I guess I have to coin the phrase, or not coin the phrase, but use the phrase indigo child. I think I was an indigo child. I saw things about people when I was very young. Like, I remember one time I went over to a friend's house. I was going to go see what he was doing. And I got there and I stood outside of the house, and it was almost like this portal opened up in the middle of my forehead, and I could see the energy in the home, and I could see that there was cruelty toward the children in that home. And again, you're 10 years old. What do you know about, kids being bullied by their own parents? But I just decided I'm going to go home. I'm not even going to go knock on the door. I was seeing things like that when I was 10. So I was aware of these forces that were at work in our life at a very early age. And so, going out of my body, and then when I returned back to my body, I started to be able to understand the meaning of dreams, which, see, I have a theory, and I guess I'm using this idea to illustrate that we are not just stuck in this three-dimensional world that we understand, that in fact there are other dimensions at work all the time in our lives. And I'm calling myself now a dimensionaut, like an astronaut, or, I was a voyager into another dimension. I was exploring this other dimension I didn't even intend to, but I slipped into this other world. And what I believe is that while I was there, and I know that people that have out-of-body experiences and near-death experiences, when they come back, they relate things that they could never have related had they not had those encounters on the other side, whether it was a positive or a negative encounter. So I believe that I was gifted with something that I brought back with me into my body from that other realm, that other dimension. And what that did was that started to inform my entire journey in life. And by the time I was 15 years old, I was interpreting people's dreams with absolute accuracy. As a matter of fact, I've been doing it my whole life. If somebody tells me a dream, I can tell them right away. I know exactly what that dream means.
Can you tell me because I keep having this dream, not all the time, but it's like every, I don't know, a few weeks or a few months. I have this dream where like there's variations of the dream, but I feel like one of the main themes is like I'm back in school for some reason. And like I didn't finish my degree, and there's, like I have to go back, and I'm like, and it's like, and I kind of wake up like it's kind of like a nightmare, because I'm like, I don't want to go back to school. Right. I don't want to take tests and go through all that rigmarole. But why do I keep having that dream? It's so annoying.
That's a really common dream, actually.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. And look, there's unfinished business in all of our lives. And I think a part of that unfinished business is, and I think it stems from the expectations that other people had for us. I'm sure that your mom and dad or whoever in your family would have liked to have seen you become PhD or whatever it is, and then you went on to pursue something entirely different. So I think that, your feeling about it is that I don't even think it's as much you or us as it is that we have these lingering effects of how other people see us in life, and that we then judge ourselves by how other people assess us. And I think a lot of people, like with me, I'll give you a perfect example. I'm the oldest of 5 kids. These are all super ambitious kids, 3 brothers and a sister. My sister's a serial entrepreneur. She starts a new business every month. She prides herself in being entrepreneurial. My other brothers are, he's a builder and he owns a real estate company. He's very wealthy. My other brother was an executive, a CEO of a big company. I myself, I'm a dimensionaut. I'm just an explorer in this world. It's like, this is my a prolonged camping experience. It's a prolonged journey that I've been on my whole life. And what I've always wanted to do is discover the secrets and the mysteries of existence. And so I haven't made the material world my aim or my goal, even though, yeah, it's great to have, the material things. But here's the deal. We only have so much time in our life. We have an hourglass and it's pouring out every single moment of every day. And I asked myself, back when I was 13 years old, I had some very, very strange experiences, including brushes with the dark side. But I always asked myself, why me? Well, why am I who I am? That's one of the most driving questions that I wanted to answer in the course of my life. What makes me me? And, I think a lot of people have that question when they're young. And, and then here comes the imposed identity that the world, it's like the Matrix. Morpheus says to me, I know why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know, you can't explain, but it's like a splinter in your mind driving you mad. I have that splinter. It never goes away. I'm writing 2 more books right now. That's books 17 and 18. I'm writing because more realizations are coming to me. More depth is coming to me, but I'm inviting that depth. I want to plumb the depths of my existence. And so when I leave this world, I want to leave behind something that really is sort of unique and sort of rare. And this is what my dad had a library of about 5,000 books that people had given him over the course of his life. When I was a young teenager, I would pull out a book, including books like the Urantia book. And I don't know if you've ever heard of the Urantia book.
No.
Yeah, it's a kind of a science fiction kind of story about people from different races who lived on Earth. To me, science fiction played a huge role in my life because I am not willing to accept explanations that are given to me by so-called experts. I really want to see it for myself. And so in the realm of science fiction, what you're doing is you're exploring possibilities. And a lot of people don't like that, by the way. A lot of people want absolute predictability. And, including in organized religion, they want to believe that, their sins are forgiven and that's kind of the end of it and they don't have to worry about it anymore. And they could be living a really terrible life, but believing that there's nothing to worry about. So, I want a certainty that comes from me seeing these things for myself, if that makes sense. And so that journey I've been on since I was very young, it has driven me toward the deeper truths of life. And so when I was 15, 16 years old, I'm reading these very esoteric and philosophical books, every book I could get my hands on, including, Emanuel Swedenborg. And I just have an insatiable appetite for ideas that are not what most people would consider mainstream. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I definitely have an interest in that stuff as well, but I'm also very skeptical of a lot of things because you have to kind of sort through all those things. Some of it's just total BS, and then some of it's like the mainstream narrative that we're given is BS. So then you kind of have to figure out which one is, and some things I don't know. I don't have the answers, but it's interesting to explore and look at both sides of it. And then, sometimes you come up with a conclusion on your own, and sometimes you're kind of like, I don't know on this one. I feel like for me, I'm at the point now where I don't know on a lot of things. There's a lot of things that I thought I knew that I thought were the truth.
Yeah.
That I'm now questioning, and going, wow, is that like really real? Or,
totally. I mean, listen, that's how I live my life every day.
Right.
But I'll tell you something else. It is important to have a certain healthy skepticism. I mean, there's certain people that are totally like skeptics, like, nah, I don't believe it. Prove it to me.
Yeah.
I'm not one of those. Again,
you got to be in the middle. I think you got to have a
right down the middle of the line. You got to. And so what I discovered early on in life, and I'll talk about my surfing accident, because what I brought back with me was a connection after my out-of-body experience. I had this connection to something higher. There's no way you can pop out of your body for 3 days, watch the world go by, see yourself interact with your friends, go to school, come home, eat dinner, go to sleep, and repeat it day after day after day. I started wondering, like, is this ever going to end? Like, am I ever going to go back to my body and be a part of this experience? And yes, 3 days later it happened. But one of the things that I brought back with me is this, I want to call it like an umbilical cord to forever, to the superconscious mind. I'm writing a book called Superconscious Mind. And I believe that was part of a journey that I was on to discover the ultimate meaning of my life and the purpose for which I exist and the mission that I was going to be on. So now, when I was between the ages of probably 15 and 17 or 18, I became super selfish. And I didn't really care about anything or anybody but myself. And, I'd go out to parties, I'd smoke pot, I would get, drunk on my ass. I would do all the things that everybody else was doing. But I had a consciousness at the same time that I was not being myself. I mean, I felt, there's the other thing too, is that when I got into surfing when I was 12 years old. Okay. We moved from Houston, Texas to Santa Barbara, California. And I found myself at the beach every day. I was a lover of water from the time I was little. And one thing I didn't like was that these controlled substances got in the way of my ability to surf. And I was really into it. I was in a few surf movies. People looked up to me as a surfer because I was really mastering the skill of surfing. It took me 5 years from the time I started until I was about 18 years old. And people really looked up to me, and they actually put me on a pedestal. And I started putting myself on that pedestal. I started thinking, yeah, I'm really good. I'm great. And so there was one day where I was going to go out surfing. And I'm standing there at the pier. I'm looking at the pier. The waves are pretty good. I think there's nobody out, just completely empty. Nobody there. I'm thinking, I'm going to go out surfing. And then I hear this. It wasn't a voice, but it might as well have been. Don't go out today. I'm thinking to myself, what? Where did that come from? And then there it is again. Don't go surfing today. And it's like, I thought I stopped. It's like, hello, there's nobody around me. Where's this coming from? And then I got upset and I said, who the hell do you think you are to tell me what I can and cannot do? So I went out surfing and I fell off my surfboard and I punctured a lung, and I was there by myself at that beach for a good long time. And I don't know how I ended up in the shallow water. This is the strange part of it. This is something I'll probably never know until after I leave this earth. And I'm laying there in the shallow water and the waves are lapping at me and I can barely breathe. And, a part of the story is I see a friend of mine that's jogging on the beach, and I was always a jokester when I was in high school. So, I'm laying there and I'm help me. And she thought I was joking. So she ran past me. 15, 20 minutes later, she comes back and I'm still laying there in the water. It's like, what are you doing? I can't breathe. So then she calls my parents, and here comes an ambulance. But before that time where they come to pick me up, I'm laying there and I'm staring up into the sky. And I had this deep realization. I don't want to live this way anymore, because I was having bad accidents. I was accident prone, bad things. I don't know if you can see my finger here, but yeah. I lost this finger when I was 3 years old. Things have happened to me my whole life. It's a little stubby. And it's like, I cried out from the depth of my being. I said, I'm done. I don't want to live my life in fear of having more of these ridiculous accidents that are disabling me more and more and more. And then I said, and I was dead serious about it, I don't want to live this way anymore. I'd rather be dead. But to me, that was a moment of surrender. It's like I was surrendering this life that I'd lived up until this point, this very selfish life that was only about me. I didn't care how I affected other people. I was the older brother of 4 other kids, so there's 5 of us in my family. I'm the oldest. I'm the experimental guinea pig anyway. My parents really never approved of me. My dad always thought I was, he always compared me to my other family members. And so at that moment, though, there was that surrender, and that's when my life started redirecting. And that is the moment where I started using meditation, because I knew that if I didn't do something at that time, that I wasn't going to live long. I just knew it. I had 3 major accidents in 3 years in a row, and I didn't want to die that way. And so I started meditating. And so the meditation that I did is derived from what the scripture says about be still and know that I am God. Okay. It doesn't say in the scripture, figure it out, struggle harder, and you'll get all the answers, because that's not how it works. So, there's an old saying, let go and let God. Well, that's not the easiest thing in the world to do. To actually surrender to something greater than yourself means that you're starting to annihilate that ego that drives you, that makes you compare yourself to everybody else, that makes you look down at other people or look up at other people. And so I'm becoming more and more aware as I'm meditating day after day, meditate a couple times a day, try to get quiet, try to let the thoughts go. And imagine that you're like standing on a stream, on the side of a kind of a raging stream. Well, the meditation that I do, the Be Still and Know meditation, you just sit and you watch the stream go by. Now, in the stream, there's all kinds of stuff, and you can be tempted to go jump in that stream and grab some of that stuff that's going by because you think it's valuable, all that stuff that's going through your mind. But if you just step back far enough, you can watch all these things, all these thoughts, all these feelings, all these emotions, all the comparisons, the ego itself. You become aware of it. And so that awareness grows over time. And it, like sands of an hourglass, there's an accumulation of objectivity. And your objectivity grows stronger. And so when you're in this world, you go back, you open your eyes, you go back out into the world, lots of girls around, lots of, ego temptations, and compare yourself to other people, put other people up, put them down, look at yourself, say you're the best, you're the worst. I mean, I remember hearing the voice that told me, you're no good. There's nothing good about you. I was paddling out one day into the surf, and I remember hearing that. I thought, wow. And then I realized something. It's not my thought. Where's that thought coming from? See, because we are, in a sense, a satellite collector for information, cosmic, both sides, good and evil. We're a collector of that. We're like a radio, and all we're doing is tuning into one signal or another. And then I stopped and I thought, maybe that's not really how my creator sees me. I probably 19, 20, 21 years old. Maybe I'm meditating 3 years. I say, that's not my voice. There's something else there. And it's trying to make me feel like my life isn't worth living. And so I watched that, and it kind of went away. And so, see, as an observer, the world changes according to what you can see about it. And, science has actually proven this, that if something is observed, like an experiment is observed, it actually has an effect on it. And I just found an article, by the way, that shows that you can actually move objects with your mind. Remember Uri Geller?
No.
He could bend spoons.
Okay. I've seen magicians do that. I don't know if it's real or if it's a trick.
Well, there are some people that actually have the power to tune their mind. The frequency, the vibration of the mind is very powerful. But this Uri Geller was able to bend spoons and do other things, move things across a table. And this is not a supernatural thing, by the way. This is actually a power of our minds. But there's a study that was done, and this is a lost study that I just unearthed. I found it years ago, and I emailed it to myself, and I'm looking at through my emails, and there it is. But my point is that the power of objectivity releases you from the subjective information that's coming in all the time from the outside world, constantly forces that are trying to mold and shape our opinions, our feelings, our emotions, our beliefs. These constant sources are pounding away at us. And so here's the thing, I'm meditating 3 years, and every time I would close my eyes, I felt like I was in a black cave. But finally, about 4 years into meditating, I'm in this cave, and all of a sudden I see this little pinpoint of light far, far away. And I thought, oh, that's where I'm going. That's my destination, is the end of this tunnel. I felt like I was trapped in a tunnel. There was a tunnel of my own mind, my own flesh, my own beliefs, the things that I believed were me. That was a trap. It was like a prison. Remember the movie Batman, where they put him in a hole?
Yeah, the Batman Begins?
Batman Begins. And he's in that hole, and he's trying to figure out how to climb out of that hole, right? And he's broken, and he's damaged, and he's starting to recover, and he tries to get out several times. This is the kind of metaphor of what it's like to actually be trapped in a flesh, based existence, where you're just nothing but a sponge and absorbing the world around you and taking in all the influences and the opinions and the pressures of other people. That is actually a prison. Okay. And
Well, it's
I wrote a
amazing
book
that,
called,
yeah, it's amazing that you could turn your mind off to see the black cave. Because when I've done meditation, it's like they said I have monkey mind. Like I can't do it. It's really hard to concentrate and just shut my mind off. I mean, I've gotten a little bit better, but I mean, getting to
here's
that
the
point
thing.
where you could see darkness would be a step.
Oh,
in the direction.
it was black. I mean, it was
Yeah, that's
pitch
amazing.
black from the moment I started, but I was aware of that.
Hmm.
And again, the idea is not to shut your thoughts off, but to separate from them.
Hmm.
And so, because to shut your thoughts off means that your brain has to stop, and your brain will not stop. Your brain is there to produce all kinds of different side effects of thinking and feeling and emotions. And you got all these gauges, these barometers, these sensitive instruments that are in there that are built into you, fight or flight. See, we have all those things as part of a survival mechanism, but then there's the higher self. And so you don't need to shut your brain off to separate from the information. It would be like, have you ever had, okay, I like the kind of music that plays in the background. I don't want to listen to lyrics when I'm working, but I love, like, for example, smooth jazz. There's a rhythm to it. And so it actually works with my brain to help me think things out and, contemplate things. But if I turn on, like, say, for example, a David Bowie, I used to love David Bowie. David Bowie is like slamming his hammer in my head because I'm listening to those music, to those lyrics, and I'm listening to that pounding rhythm. I want something that helps me to become aware of what it is that I'm looking for. Because sometimes, like an archaeologist, they don't even know what they're looking for. And then they stumble onto something, and then they start to excavate around what is this? There's a piece of something here. This is our past. This is the life that we've lived. These are the reasons. These are the bones of the reasons that caused us to become who we are today. But as long as the world is shoving, information into your head like a sausage, you're going to have layer upon layer upon layer upon layer, and you're going to have to excavate deeply, deeply, deeply to get to the bones of where it all started. Because once you understand, it's like a Sherlock Holmes mystery, right? I used to love, who was it? Robert Downey Jr. that did the Sherlock Holmes series. Great series. He was very analytical, but he could see things ahead of time as the way it was written. Beautiful illustrations of how once you step back from the scenery, and you could see him when he was into a fight, he knew exactly what punches he was going to throw. He knew exactly how to make that situation work in his favor, not because he was emotional, not because he was reacting, but because he was not reacting. He was in an objective state. He wasn't in a subjective state. And let me define that for you. You and I and every other human being do not realize that once we start to react to any kind of external stimulus, and including internal thoughts, moments of doubt or whatever, but in those moments, we become the effect of a cause. And I've talked about this for 40 years now. Once you become the effect of a cause, it begins to control you. Now, when you step back from being the effect of a cause, suddenly there's a polarity shift. And so instead of becoming the effect of some cause that's working on you, that's pushing your buttons, that's trying to make you react in some way, shape, or form, suddenly you become the cause of an effect. Just being neutral, being objective, getting quiet. And there was a great show I used to watch when I was young called Kung Fu with David Carradine. You ever see that?
I might have seen a little bit. I definitely heard of it. Yeah, I know.
Okay, so he was a Shaolin monk, and he had practiced meditation. He practiced learning to be objective. So he finds himself in the wild, wild west, and everybody in the wild, wild west is a savage. Everybody wants to destroy him. He's a Chinese man in a strange land. But what he brought with him from that world that he came out of, from the monastery, is the practice of being objective and learning how to step back and not reacting to the stress of that situation. And so rather than him being the effect of a cause, there's one great show that I'll never forget where they caught him and they stuck him in a 20-foot deep hole with another guy. The other guy's in the hole scratching and trying to figure out how to get out of this hole. And his name was Cain. He's sitting there and he's just meditating. He's just letting it all go, and he's allowing something higher to filter into him rather than the effect of a cause. Now he's being the cause of an effect. And what's happening is he's demonstrating to this other guy who's absolutely losing his mind because he feels that they're going to die in there. He says, look, everything you're doing, all the struggle that you're putting out, it's not going to change the circumstances. The struggle is the problem. So just watch me. And the guy watched him, and they figured out a way. It was one of those situations where everything ended up turning out for his benefit. But my point is that I'm probably 15 years old when I'm watching this, and I started to see that there are principles involved. There are higher principles involved. And, there's stories about George Washington riding into battle, and where bullets are going through his jacket, but never touching him. Reminds me of The Matrix, where Neo is leaning over backwards and these bullets are just passing right by him. I'm telling you that there is a force at work in all of our lives. And I'll say it this way, that we are not human beings having spiritual experiences. We are spiritual beings having human experiences. And so if we tap into the spiritual side of our nature, that influences the outcomes of those moments in life, where otherwise other people will end up succumbing to a dangerous or a terrible situation. Others will survive. I should take a breath and let you talk.
That's a lot to unpack there. I mean, it does seem like there is this other, whatever you want to call it. My dad wrote a book called Ultimate Reality. So I think that's what he calls it.
Yeah.
An ultimate reality. It's different than the reality that we're living in. And there's different ways to reach that. I mean, we discussed some of it: near-death experiences, dreams, meditation.
Yeah.
What do you think of psychedelics? I just had a guy on who's doing some really interesting research with psychedelics and addiction and mental health and PTSD and all these other things. And I feel like that could be another way to reach those different levels. And I know, like, Joe Rogan talks about it a lot. And he took DMT. Mm-hmm. He said that one of the things he learned from DMT, he said there was like these voices, because you mentioned these voices saying you're not good enough. He said he heard the people that were kind of mocking him. And so that taught him that he needs to not take himself so seriously. So is that kind of a common experience to have those kinds of, whether, I don't know whether you call them like hearing voices or hallucinations or whatever, but there's some sort of voice that's telling you you're not good enough or mocking you? Or
well, again, I will only put it this way, that we are a satellite dish. We're radio.
Yeah.
We're frequency tuners.
Yeah. So there's different, there's evil and good, or what would you call those?
Okay. Absolutely. There's good and evil, light and darkness, let's say. But remember that there's two ways that you can use your mind. And I'm talking about tuning now, tuning into frequencies. You can enhance your awareness, and you can do that by learning to meditate and mindfulness. And it's amazing how many thousands of studies there are now about meditation and how it improves your overall health, generally speaking, your well-being. But then you can tune it to the opposite side, because see, there's so again, I'll go to a scientific principle, and that is that scientists need actual truth and facts in order for their experiments to succeed. So without truth, there's no way to determine whether or not something actually works. The truth of anything, right? But there are people who have been so damaged by their experiences with this world and family and friends and the betrayal and all of these terrible things that can happen to us, that there's a component of their identity that is angry about the way they've been treated, and they blame God. And so
explain that though, because why are some people, I mean, this is what's always bothered me, is just like, I mean, I feel like I should, here's my thing is, like, in my head, I feel like I should be pretty grateful for the life that I have. I have a lot of great things. I have pretty good health and all those. And, I'm not worried about paying my bills or anything like that. And yet, there's parts of me that are unhappy and I feel like I'm not doing good enough. And then you meet people that are in a wheelchair and they love life. They're like, they appear that way. Maybe behind closed doors, it's different. I don't know. But, people with like severe physical
Right.
problems that appear happier than me. And I go, well, what's going on here? How is this guy happier than me? I've got more than him. I should be happier, but he's happier and he's got way less than me. Like, how have those people figured it out?
Again, I think it's relative to the experience and whether or not you choose to gain the highest and the best from it, or whether you choose to hold on to the dark side of it, the downside of it. You know what I'm saying? Because there's choice. See, choice is it is an undeniable truth that choice exists. Now, some people want to say that we live in a hologram, but that's insane, because if that's true, then it wouldn't matter if we got in car accidents and got decapitated. Nothing would matter if we lived in a hologram, because it's only a simulation anyway. So who cares? No, life is real, pain is real, and truth governs these things. And so, my point about people that use psychedelics is that they are, in my opinion, caught in a struggle that they don't know how to disengage from. People that have obsessive compulsive disorder, they have these thoughts, these recurring thoughts that, drive them, and they can't just step back from it because they've given it a lot of power. They, in other words, belief is a form of energy. When you believe in something, it powers up whatever it is that the belief is, and then where it comes from, whether it's the subconscious or the superconscious mind helps you be free from debilitating beliefs, but the subconscious mind continuously throws at us these moments, like I heard myself saying, and it wasn't even me, "You're no good. There's nothing good about you. You're a loser. You're a failure." You can hear it. That's the same voice that tells you to drive into oncoming traffic. That part of you is the part of you that is in a conflict with the truth. And that truth, where does truth come from? There's a source of truth. And if you look up the word source, it's a really interesting word. But the source of truth is the source of actual reality. And actual reality doesn't necessarily conform to our ego. And so our ego can easily get upset when we don't get what we want. You're saying, I know, I feel the same way. I mean, there's parts of my life I'm very unfulfilled. But that doesn't make me say, oh, it's not worth living. It only makes me look to find out why I'm unfulfilled and what will make me have that sense of fulfillment. And so this is what I have how many, 20 years left, maybe, if I'm lucky, maybe 25. I'm going to spend the rest of that time looking for the answer. And the answer, and the greatest man that ever lived, in my opinion, said, know the truth and it shall make you free. So if you're running away from the truth, then you have a problem. If you're not dealing with truth straight up and straightforward, then what are you dealing with? What are you doing with the truth? And it could be that you're rejecting the truth. Now, here's the problem with that. You reject truth and truth rejects you. It's a boomerang effect. You throw a ball up against a wall, the wall's going to spit it back at you. Truth, there are undeniable truths about life. And so people who are caught in a syndrome of rejecting truths that they need to hear, that they need to see, that they need to accept, and they could be angry at God, even though they don't even know what God is or who he is, but that's the label that they've slapped on the reason why they're unhappy, because if God was so great, why would he let this happen to me? Right. If God's so good, why doesn't he take me out of this? Why doesn't he change my life? But see, so if you're angry at God, you're in this endless loop. You're caught up in an endless loop. And so these different kinds of medications have a tendency to break the cycle. But what they do is they aren't enhancing your awareness so that you can see what it is you're dealing with. They're reducing your awareness. Now, when you reduce your awareness, you open a door to another dimension. Just like when you enhance your awareness, you're enhancing it to awareness of some things that are above you. Now you're reducing your awareness and you become a doorway for other things to come through you. Look what they're doing at CERN. They're trying to create black holes that could consume our entire world. I mean, there's some crazy stuff going on there. But what if we have a little black hole in our own life that's just sucking away our life and our energy? And where did it come from? Did we create it? Are we giving it our energy and sustaining it by being angry? Because, anger is very unhealthy. It makes you do all kinds of crazy things. It makes you smoke and drink and overeat. And you're hurting yourself by thinking that you're hurting other people. It's like drinking poison and expecting to kill somebody else. Being angry and being frustrated and being revengeful. I mean, Jim Carrey gave a great speech. I don't know if you've seen it, talking about grace. And
I've seen a couple of his. Yeah. Is that the one where, I think there was one line I remember he said something about, I wish I had the power to make everybody rich and famous, because then they would realize that's not the answer.
Yes, absolutely. Look, there are turning points in life, you see, and those turning points come at moments when you least expect them. And so, as I said before, depending upon how you deal with situations, and it's not what happens to you, it's how you deal with it. And so if you deal with it from a reactionary point of view, which most people can't help, I'm not putting anybody down for saying, well, you're reacting, because that's a natural part of being a human being, is reaction. It's a survival mechanism. But if it doesn't stop at some point and you step back and you learn to be really objective and realize that there is more at play here than just how you feel, right? If you step back from a situation, I have a crazy neighbor she doesn't like my wife. My wife's absolutely beautiful, and this one isn't so much. And so, I'm sure that the husband next door has said things about my wife to her. And so now she's taken this, it's a visceral dislike. But what can you do about that? So she's always now throwing little barbed darts at us. Come home the other day and she tells me, this woman, I get out of my car and she says, you need to drive the speed limit on residential streets. Well, I went past her at 20 miles an hour. She was getting her mail. She doesn't have a radar detector in her head. She's a little control freak. But see, what she's trying to do, and she's a personal injury lawyer, she's trying to push my button so she has a reason to come after me. And I know exactly what game is being played there. So how do I react to that? Okay, thank you. What's the point of getting into an argument with a crazy person? A person against their will is convinced against their will is of the same opinion. So she's never going to change her mind about who we are.
Well, you just made a case for everyone to quit social media then, right now.
Yeah, the cancel culture. Who cares what anybody thinks?
Everybody's arguing with everybody about I go on Facebook, and it's funny because Facebook, I feel like it used to be kind of just people sharing their day and here's what I had for lunch and so, and now it's all this like political things and people arguing with each other, and some of it's not even political. It's just dumb arguments. Like I have friends, a lot of music people. So they'll argue about bands or like this. I'm like, what is the point of these arguments? maybe for some people that's fun. I don't know. It's
a filler. It's a filler for empty lives, basically. As
you say in, I think this is in one of your, I wrote this in my notes. I think it must've been one of your books.
Yeah.
You talk about how, they did the survey and 80% of people across all age ranges felt that they were living without purpose. That's a lot. Yes. That's a lot of people. That 30% of young people complain about being stuck in a rut.
Yep.
And that they're not living their best life. There's just like a lot of people struggling out there. And that's kind of part of the reason I do this podcast, is to try to, partly to figure it out for myself, because I'm not perfect, but also to, share those insights with other people. So,
sure.
What you're saying is meditation, has that been one of the most helpful things for you?
Yeah, listen, I'm a cancer survivor on top of all of this. I had melanoma in 2009. They took a chunk of an avocado piece, half an avocado out of my shoulder for the size of a freckle. I've had skin cancer my whole life because I was a surfer. Grew up in Hawaii and Southern California. And I have probably over 100 things that have been cut off or frozen off or whatever. But the last time I had to go in, there was one on my shoulder, big one. And it required 14 stitches and 2.5 hour surgery. And I had no anxiety about it. I went in, I knew it had to be removed. See, there was no struggle with certain things. If you struggle with certain things, you're resisting it. And whatever you resist persists. And so if you have fear going into life, into situations like that, going into work, if you have a mean person that you're dealing with in this world, if you give the power of fear, fear will consume you. It's like a fire. So the reason I bring that up is because I was amazed that for 2.5 hours, the surgeon chopped away at me. I had another one on my foot too that was huge. It took 3 hours to remove. It was like the size of a silver dollar. And they kept going down layer of layer. It's called Mohs surgery. And they take a slice of it and then they find out if there's any cells left. And they kept coming back more and more. And I'm on my knees with my foot kind of hanging out behind me. 3 hours of this, but it didn't feel like 3 hours. It didn't feel like, I mean, yes, there was pain. But see, I didn't react to the pain. I didn't give the pain power to control how I felt. I've been through this so many times, and I know that if I just stay in my center, if I not succumb to resenting or struggling with the pain, that it will pass. And so everything in life has sort of a shelf life. It only lasts so long. Everything only lasts so long. But see, how we deal with it either makes us the effect of a cause, which is I sent to my body by being calm and remaining in my center, I sent healing energy into my body, right? And so I got up and walked out of both of these surgeries, especially one on my foot. I didn't even notice it. It was like weird. It's like when you notice something, it seems to hurt more. It seems to take longer to heal. When you're struggling with it, when you're angry about it, when you're frustrated, when you resent the pain, you're giving negative energy to it. So
yeah. No, there is something to be said about that if you allow yourself to, like, especially with psychological things, I know that's like, if you try to, okay, like, I mean, the perfect example they always gave in psychology was like, you tell somebody, don't think about pink elephants, and then they think about pink elephants. Like, it's like the way our mind works is
but
like,
see, I'll show you that I actually use that example of a pink elephant. I don't know. Did I send that to you?
No, I think I just
funny that you bring that up.
Psychology class. I feel like that was
that's great. I love it because I was going to give a discussion, a 15-minute to present the problem and then present the solution to a group of Amazon workers, 1,500 of them. And my friend who invited me to go there said, look, you don't have any time here. And I thought, well, how do I make a point about learning how to be objective and the power of objectivity? And then it occurred to me out of nowhere, a pink elephant, right? So I say to people, and if anybody's listening, don't do this, but I say, close your eyes and imagine a pink elephant. Just go ahead. Let me know when you see it. Okay. So I see the pink elephant. I said, now flow that energy that you're giving to that pink elephant image in your mind all the way down either one of your arms into your hands, and just focus on the ends of your fingers, just the tips of your fingers, first with your thumb, now with your large finger, then the next finger, then the next finger, then the pinky, and just repeat that until you feel a little bit of energy stimulating the end of the finger, and it'll feel tingly and a little bit warm. So this only takes about 30 seconds. And then I ask them, what happened to the pink elephant? Well, it's gone. That's because you took your energy away from it. You focused it in the moment. You anchored yourself in the now moment. So, and I said, you could do that with really any situation in life. If you re-center yourself in the now, instead of reacting, instead of struggling with the thought, take the energy away from it. See, because thoughts are not going to go away on their own. They're going to persist. And the more you struggle, the more you feed it. It's like throwing gasoline on a fire. But if you consciously remove that energy from that thought has no power. A thought has no power of its own, by the way. This is what people have to realize. You don't have to struggle with thoughts, but you think you do. You've learned to struggle with thoughts.
Yeah.
And here's the conscious thing is that you got to fight cancer. You got to fight your thoughts. You don't fight your thoughts.
Yeah.
You let them go.
I've learned that too because I used to have things where I'm like, okay, I don't want to think about that because it's unpleasant. And now, like, especially when I go swimming, that's kind of the time where I really like, you turn off, you don't have a phone in the pool or whatever. So It's just me usually by myself in the pool. And I'm just swimming. There's no music. There's nothing. It's just me and my thoughts. And so a lot of times, something bad, I'll start thinking, I'm like, oh God, I don't want to think about that. And then I go, wait, all right, just let myself think about it. We'll think about it for as long as we want. And then once you kind of allow yourself to think about it, then you kind of process through it.
It loses energy.
And then you're like, all right, well, I don't want to think about that anymore. I want to think about something
Right.
fun, or like what I want to
Yeah.
do today, what's for dinner. You get bored with it. Whereas
Yeah.
if you try to fight it, then it just keeps coming in. It's like you almost have to listen to your instincts, which
Yeah.
I don't know why sometimes those bad thoughts come in, but yeah, I mean, maybe they're still processing about it to do, and maybe that's why they occasionally come back.
Well, but again, I think all of my books are based on insights that I've had.
Mm-hmm.
And I've written 3 books recently that are based on dreams. One of them is called Not of This World. And in this dream, I saw that there were energies being exchanged. You know what the stuff in a lava lamp looks like when it moves
Yeah.
up and down?
Oh yeah, for sure.
I was given this dream and I saw this energy, like the substance of a lava lamp, going through a very thin veil between dimensions. The dimensions are only separated by a cellophane thin piece of something, whatever it is, ether. I don't know what it is. This is what I was shown. But then the more I contemplated, I realized that there's an exchange of energies between our life and this world and the other dimension right next door. And it's constantly happening. If you hear your neighbor yelling at your kid, that's going to affect your life.
Yeah. So what is explain lucid dreaming? That's where you're dreaming and you're dreaming.
All right, so let's get to that because that's in my book. Pay attention to your intuition, and there's a huge chapter on it. And so I want to say 25, 30 years ago. Yeah, 30 years ago, I went to sleep one night and I started having this dream, and it was a hypnagogic state, sleep paralysis. Okay, I fell into a very deep sleep very quickly. And in that state, I started to have a dream. Now I had, my first marriage, very difficult marriage. And in this dream, in reality, I hadn't spoken to her for 6 months. We lived in the same house. We have, 4 kids, but there was no communication, period. It was just gone. And so in this dream, I saw her coming out of this it was like in a dark construct, coming toward me with a smile and very seductively to kiss me. And I thought, oh, how wonderful. But then something kicked in and I thought, something isn't right about this. And as soon as I thought that, this person, the image of that person, turned into a giant, for lack of a better word, a tube worm with teeth going all the way down into the belly. I mean, just like spirals and spirals and spirals of teeth. A huge tube worm, 6.5 feet tall. And from that tube worm was a vacuum coming from it. And I could feel the wind going past my ear. I felt it. It was that real. And it was trying to suck the soul out of my body, this thing. I call it a life force sucking creature. So what happened is I'm sitting there and I'm grabbing it and I'm struggling to keep it from absorbing me, sucking me in. I'm in a hypnagogic state, so I can't wake up. And then what occurs to me? I have to call out to Jesus. There's something, I have to call it to the higher power to save me from this. I couldn't save myself. I was stuck in a hypnagogic state. And I said in my dream, it was like so hard for me to say it. It was almost impossible. In the name of Jesus, go away. And once I got that out in my mind, then it started to deflate. But it was still sucking the whole time. This thing with teeth going all the way down. I could feel it trying to absorb me. Then I realized something. I had to speak it into this world. And here I am. I'm in sleep paralysis. I couldn't move. So I had to force my lips to say the same thing. In the name of Jesus, go away. I had to invoke the higher power. And then finally, it's just sort of deflated all the way down. And I picked it up and I flung it as far as I could after that happened. And 7 days later, she took off and took my kids. And that was the end of it. That was how it ended.
That sounds like a scene from a movie or something.
It was the most, listen, I woke up from that. My bed was wet from sweat. It was real. It was a real thing. But see, that's what you call, and by the way, I've been on the Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie a number of times. And he said out of 5,000 people that I've interviewed, you're the only one that knows what you're talking about when it comes to dreams. But see, this is a part of what I've been given in my life, and I've had to go through these hellish experiences in order for me to be able to relate that there are dreams that are from above, and there are dreams that come to you from the dark side.
Have you ever seen that show Evil?
Yeah, I've seen a little bit of it. Yeah.
Okay, because my friends were talking about it, so I watched, I think just the first episode or two. But there was the first episode. She keeps having this reoccurring dream of this demon, or she thinks it's a dream, and she can't tell if is this really a demon coming to me, or is this a dream? Right. So she does something where she writes a word above her on the ceiling in her bed, and then
so she can tell.
So what is the thing with that? Like she said, like during dreams you can't read words or something, so that's why. And then she goes, "That's how I know it's a dream, because I can't read this." Is that what was that?
I have never heard that before.
Okay, so maybe there's a TV thing.
That could be just great writing.
Okay,
I don't know, but the idea is that there are these things. There are certain kinds of demons. It sounds to me that it was like either an incubus or a succubus. That was. Again, these are the kind of demons that try to suck the soul out of people. They try to have sex with you. They try to molest you and violate you. And it feels like a dream, but there's a force at work there. Because what kind of a thing is it that in your mind that makes you be violated? And I think some of the extraterrestrial stuff.
I was going to say, that's what it reminds. I had a guy on here who wrote a book about all these extraterrestrial encounters that people have had. Right. Some of the lesser known ones. I mean, not the big ones people know about, but he interviewed all these people, and it's really interesting. Whatever you believe in that, whether you do or you don't, it's interesting to hear their stories.
I can tell you that you know who Lou Elizondo is, right? He was the head of the ATIP program for the Pentagon for 9 years. Okay, well, he ran this secret operation called ATIP.
Okay,
for the Pentagon, and then he quit, but he said on a podcast, probably within the last year or two, that he was having a conversation with a military higher up. I imagine it's somebody in the Air Force. And the guy said to him, "Look, we don't want you pursuing these things." He said, "What do you mean?" And I think it was a colonel that said to him, "Look, have you read your Bible lately?" He says, "Well, I know the Bible. I don't know where you're going with this." And he said, "Well, if you had read your Bible, you would know that we know what they are." He says, "Well, what do you mean?" He thought he was dealing with some kind of super secret technology. He said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, you read your Bible, you'll see that these are demonic, and that's why we don't want you chasing them." Now, this is a guy in the military. Mm-hmm. So the question is now, what informed his understanding of what it is that we're really dealing with? Now, it doesn't mean, by the way, that when we're talking about demons, doesn't mean that they don't have a physical shape and form. They live in another dimension. When Jesus came back through the wall after he was crucified, and he came to have supper with his friends, with the disciples, he said, "Wait, don't touch me yet. My translation is not complete." So there are forces at work in this world, and it doesn't mean that they're just metaphysical. It means that they bring with them, from whatever dimension they're in, a kind of technology that looks very much like something that we then, and again, it has physical properties. What did they find in Roswell? Why are they keeping it so secret? Mm-hmm. What is it? Is it something other dimensional physics? I believe it is. Right.
That's the thing, is that there's a lot of people that think these extraterrestrial beings are actually interdimensional beings. And a lot of this stuff could all be connected. That's my theory, is that some of this stuff is connected. And I don't know what the answer is, but I think that, aliens, demons, like there could be some sort of connection there. I mean, it could all be a psyop from the government. I don't know, but there's something going on where people are seeing a lot of the same kinds of things and same kinds of beings and having the same kinds of experiences. Maybe it's all a delusion. I don't know, but it sure is fascinating either way.
You know, if you go back, and the book of Enoch was left out of the mainstream Bibles because it has a lot of really horrifying stories that it tells about the Watchers and the Nephilim. And these beings, these 200 beings that came down from another planet. That's what they call Planet X, this 10th planet, Nibiru. I don't know. Most people are not really familiar, but science has actually detected this big rogue planet that's out there. It has a 3,600 year orbit, way, way out into space. But the Book of Enoch kind of shows how these things came down from wherever they came down from, and they started eating human beings and violating animals. And it's a frightening tale. And that's in my book, Not of This World, because what we're dealing with is, let's say that there are forces at work, strange forces that have been around for thousands and thousands of years. And by the way, I never bought into the idea that human beings were only 6,000 years old. I mean, the pyramids are 10,000 years old, and they're finding all these different archaeological sites that are 25 and 35,000 years old. I mean, anybody that would believe into a strictly religious interpretation of the human race, they're missing the whole point. We've been around for a long time in different incarnations, going back, thousands, if not millions of years, my opinion. And I think it's being borne out now by certain kind of science that goes beyond the limitations of what is accepted. And so, yeah, I do believe that these are forces that are at work in our lives, and they are maybe from could be that there's a rogue planet out there with a giant species on it. I mean, they found recently in California 10-foot tall people in a cave, skeletons of those 10-foot tall people. And the Indians of the area have had tales of 10-foot tall giants. And there are tales, just like the flood. Every culture has a flood mythology, every culture on Earth, of a time where there was a great flood. And they also have mythology about giants existing. Ancient alien theory, I don't believe it. I don't buy it for 1 minute. I think it's all concocted, because if moving big rocks is the best they got, doesn't mean anything to me, right? Moving giant rocks, okay, doesn't mean that they brought us anything other than strange science, weird science. Okay, that's what I have to say about it. And, it goes back into the idea of people that use psychedelics. Sean Ryan, I don't know if you've ever seen the Sean Ryan podcast.
Yeah.
Interesting guy. He's totally into psilocybin. He's into the magic mushroom thing. He said it changed his life. He actually became a Christian recently, as far as I know. But it breaks some of these things. Some of these psychoactive drugs can break that endless loop of thoughts, because they don't know how to stop it themselves. So they need something to disconnect them, to uncouple them from those thoughts. And so maybe it's a chemical straitjacket. Maybe it's a reducing awareness for people who take the dark side of that, so that they can get closer to these dark entities, because they feel more at home with them. They feel more aligned with dark entities than they do with angels of light. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't appeal to me, truly. I wouldn't want to do anything. I don't drink. I don't smoke. Drinking gives me a headache. I don't do anything that reduces my awareness, because I want to enhance my awareness, and I want to have those great realizations that I've been getting as I get older, and writing books about them.
What is the scariest thing that you've seen or heard of in doing all this research about all these things in the world? Like what thing scares you the most?
Power. Because power is an aphrodisiac, and it turns people into monsters, and you can see it. And world wars have been fought. Hitler, they were deeply into the occult, the Nazis, and people will not like this, but I did, and it's in my newest book. There's a lot of research that shows that BLM, they are avowed Marxists. And they visit with spirit beings, and that's part of their religion and part of their belief system.
Really? There's evidence of this?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I know
as a matter of fact, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll send you my latest podcast, because I have them talking about it on tape.
I just found it interesting that, I thought it was great that they raised all this money, but then they didn't do anything with it. The lady bought like 4 mansions or something.
I know.
And then I don't understand how that's not a bigger story or scandal, or I don't know if that's legal.
Because listen,
you can
the mainstream
raise money
media,
and give 1% to the cause and then keep 99% for yourself.
Listen, the media is in with the dark side. These are not people that think for themselves. They're not people that are actually interested in truth, period. All they want to do is get their paycheck and be comfortable with their peer group. And so they will give them a tear sheet and they'll read the talking points. And you've probably seen some of these, compilations of people reading the news, and they're all saying the same thing.
Yeah, that's really creepy.
I mean, by the hundreds.
Yeah. I mean, they say like, oh, that would never, I think I just saw that clip being referenced with an interview with Jon Stewart. And they were talking about, I want to say maybe Venezuelan or some other third world country where they manipulate the media. And Jon Stewart says, well, that would never happen here. And then they show that clip of 100 different newscasters reading the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And what's interesting now is I feel like a lot of truth is being exposed for good or bad, or whether people want to believe it or not, on podcasts and independent journalists and things. And people we all have a voice now. So, I mean, you got to sort through all the bullshit. Like I said earlier, there's a lot of bullshit out there, but if you can sort through some of it, I mean, you can really learn a lot about the world. And it's weird because I used to avoid all the news and the media because I just thought, oh, this is all depressing. It's all, I kind of had the wool over my eyes, my head in the sand, whatever you want to say, because I didn't want, and now I feel like, it's like you said earlier, like the truth will set you free.
It will.
Actually, once you learn about how crooked everybody is and the government, and the media, and you learn how crooked it all is, it actually kind of is like freeing in a way, because then you're not reliant or dependent on them. It's like, okay, now I need to take care of myself. I mean, we have friends and family and things like that. We're not totally alone, but being aware that when you become an adult is like, you can't be relying on the government to take care of you or help you out, or any politician or any of this shit. You've got to learn how to take care of yourself and help each other. We can help each other, but we can't rely on some politician or government to come in and save us. That's not.
Here's the thing about truth, Chuck. The truth will set you free, but first you'll be pretty miserable.
Yeah.
You have to struggle through it. It's like recovering from a terrible accident. Yeah. You got to do the physical therapy part of it if you want to regain your life. And it will make you miserable, but at the same time, you will find whatever it is that you're looking for. The freedom will occur to you. And this is to answer your question about people that are in wheelchairs. When you have to struggle to have what other people have without struggle, that struggle makes what you have in the end so much more valuable. Look what I had to go through to get back on my feet or do whatever.
Well, I feel like those people like that that are in a wheelchair or whatever, or have some sort of debilitating disease, but they're still alive. And so I think that they have this sense of gratitude, like, I could have died, I could be dead, but I'm still alive.
Yes.
So, oh my God, I came so close. Like, being alive is an amazing gift. I'm just really happy to be alive. And, and so, like, we take so many things for granted. We take our health for granted, and our relationships, and even the physical things that we have. If we have a house and a car, we're doing better than a lot of people. And we just, my car's a piece of crap, it's not nice enough, or my house isn't as big as this guy's, or whatever. Like, we should just be more grateful, which I'm guilty of too. But
most people, though, they don't realize, this is a hard truth for people to realize, is that they don't think their own thoughts. Pretty much. Most people have a few original thoughts. And the most original thought that you can have is that I am the sum total of my experiences and I don't like it. And that's when you start to go, well, who am I supposed to be? And then the next question is, how do I get to that place where I'm comfortable with the person I'm meant to be, that I came into this world? I have a purpose. And, we were talking about that study. The world takes you off your purpose. It fills your life. And I call it the wax fruit syndrome. The wax fruit is beautiful. And it looks just like real fruit. But when you start to eat it, there's no substance to it. It's empty. And then you get hungrier and hungrier. If you keep eating the fake fruit, one of these days you're going to go, I want real fruit. I want food. I want the food that gives my body life. And a lot of people turn to vegetarianism and different kinds of diets. And because, dieta means way of life. And so we all have a way of life that we don't even realize was pretty much imposed on us. It's a cultural thing. And we're not living our own lives, and we're living as an effect of a cause. That's our culture. And look at the young people today. I mean, it's so sad, but it's all brainwashing. Culture is brainwashing, period, no matter how you look at it. Now, some cultures have better kinds of brainwashing than others. But see, we have to have an identity installed in us from the time we're young, so that we have something to overcome, so that we could say, okay, I'm going to shed that skin now. I'm going to become the person that I feel growing up inside of me, whether it's a musician or an artist or, an athlete. It doesn't matter what it is. Most people are living their lives based on what they've been told to do or not do. And they don't really make any, they don't really make any original decisions. They don't have any authority. They're always asking permission rather than forgiveness. And then we see the rebels, and we like the rebels because the rebels represent to us a side of ourselves that we could be. We could break out of this. We could. And this is what the movie The Matrix is all about. He is an imposed reality that he's been living his whole life. Why do my eyes hurt? Because you've never used them before. What's happening to us? We're all being told what to do all day long, every day. And the most original thought you can have is, I'm not thinking my own thoughts. That's original. And where did that come from? And then it's a process of elimination. I call it the conscious process of elimination. You start to become aware, and you have two blueprints for your life. One has a future, the other one doesn't. So let's say, for example, the dietary blueprint. Look at these people. Look how half of Americans are obese right now. Half of Americans have diabetes. I have diabetes. Now, it's not from me being, an obese person. I sat in a room surrounded by electromagnetic fields for 30 years, producing radio programs. And those electromagnetic fields ate away at my health and well-being. So I manage it now by exercise and diet. And my doctor says, you could pass for being in your late 40s. But that's because I am consciously making choices about what I'm going to put in my body and my refrigerator. I have to choose. I don't choose to eat sugar, although I do occasionally have a little bit, but it's not the sugar. See, it's the impulses that drive us. And so are we really making our own decisions, or are we allowing our sensations, our taste buds, reacting to the world? Are we allowing those things to shape and mold us until there's nothing left?
Yeah. So how do you control that though? Because that is tough, having those desires to have a piece of chocolate. It's there's some great food out there that's not healthy for you.
Well, here's the thing. It's, these choices are as stark as knowing that if you're going to jump out of an airplane, you better have a parachute. A lot of people will realize halfway down that they forgot to put on their parachute, or that they didn't even put it on. See, if we realize that the choices that we make are pretty much life and death choices all day long, every day, but they're incremental choices, little by little. It's called death on the installment plan. You take a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and eventually you end up with a full-blown condition. See what I'm saying? Whether it's smoking or drinking, people ended up with cancer. My father-in-law died of, terminal cancer. He smoked his whole life, 71 years old. He died of cancer. It was a predictable outcome. He was a smoker and a drinker. He thought, okay, well, when I die, everything goes flatline. But then at the end, he started realizing, wait a minute, I want to live. There's a lot more for me to know. It was too late for him. It was just too late. But is it sad that people get to that point at the very last moment? That it's just too late. They've lived their whole life and not realized that they sort of just, blew it off. It's like, death. But death is another frontier. That's why I'm a dimension knot, because I want to discover what I'm going toward. I wrote a book called Knowing Where your journey into your life after death, knowing where you're going before you leave. Isn't it a good idea that when you're going to take a trip, you get a roadmap and you have your GPS on, so where
does it? What have you insights do you have from that without reading the whole book?
The bottom line is that death is the next frontier. It's the undiscovered country. Now because of near-death experiences, we've heard what people. There's a guy that wrote a book called Heaven is Real. I think his name is Eben Alexander. He has a remarkable story. Another one is
that the guy that was an atheist and then he had a near-death experience?
Yes. Yeah, he was an atheist. Howard Storm. Here's another one where he was an atheist and he died, and he was rescued from
was
hell.
That the guy that was like an aggressive and he was like feared by his family, and then he became a monster?
Yeah. Yep.
Crazy.
Yep. These stories they're so informative. Because what you realize is that death has two corridors, one that goes up and one that goes down. And so, if it's one goes toward the light, one goes away from the light. And so you're the only factor there, depending upon. And by the way, most people have no idea that they're in a default mode. They're letting life choose for them. They're going along with the crowd. I was going to talk about mass formations because I don't know if you remember the story of the Hutus and the Tutsis.
No.
Okay, well, there's in Africa, there was a political thing that happened where their president was killed in an airplane. Somebody blew up the airplane, and then these people, these two different tribes, the radio announcers were saying, well, they murdered our president. They have to pay. 800,000 people took machetes to each other. 800,000 people died. There were piles of arms and legs and limbs. This is a result of one event that took place. And it was children and everybody that was engulfed in this mass formation of madness. And so on various levels, we all live in some kind of mass formation. I mean, that's what society is all about. Except for, in the world that we live in, it's fairly calm. It's fairly social and cordial. And people try to get along. But man, when things get inflamed, things can go completely nuts. I mean, look at
yeah. Well, that's what I noticed. That's when I started, like I said, I didn't watch the news. And then I did on 2020 because shit was going crazy and people were ready to murder each other for a roll of toilet paper. And I was like, I need to figure out what's going on here because this is very bizarre. And then, then you start going down the rabbit hole and it's like, oh my gosh, this is like crazy stuff going on. And that's when I think it's about, for me, I'd like to be more self-sufficient and be right. I mean, you talk about society and it's like, I'd like to have a disconnect. I mean, I'd like to interact with society, but then also have a place where I can roll back and go, okay, I don't need to like be dependent.
Well, here's the thing.
Yeah.
If I go to a dinner, I'll have a small piece of pie, maybe. I'll share one with my wife. I don't want the whole cake. You don't have to take it all in. You just take it in little bits that are digestible. You know what I'm saying? Well,
and what I do is I notice when I start getting kind of too anxious about the world or worried about news things or something, I'm like, oh, you know what? I've like been brainwashing myself. I've been watching the news too much. And then I'll go, okay, let me fix myself. Let me re-brainwash myself. And I'll start watching all these inspirational David Goggins, Andy Frisella, all these motivational speeches like Jim Carrey, the one you mentioned, like some Denzel Washington, all these. And then I just start getting energized, or I start listening to motivational podcasts and those things. And then
you're tuning for what it is that you are more compatible with.
You feel so much better. Yeah. And then my mood completely changes. You can really, just with like like an hour or two of like listening to that kind of stuff, it can really change your mood, I think.
Well, because it shifts your perceptions from the dark over toward, the hopeful side of life. Right. And so, I mean, we all have to be more deliberate about what we allow in. With our diet, it's the same thing. Eat better, feel better, think better, feel better, act better, be better. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But if you just abandon, if you abandon everything, it's like you look at Chicago. It's like people have abandoned civility. They don't care. They'll just kill somebody on the street, take their tennis shoes, whatever it may be. This is coming to a big city and it's sitting near you. I mean, you hear about it all the time. And so, we do have a collective. We do have what they call a mass formation, but some mass formations are peaceful, and some are destructive. And you look at Russia and Ukraine, and people get caught up in it. They don't even know who's right or wrong. They don't know. They have no idea who's right or wrong.
I know that we don't even know what
they're agreeing with or disagreeing with. Yeah. It's the same with these people who are supporting Hamas against Israel. They don't know what they're doing.
Here's my take on all that stuff. I just want peace. I don't want one side to win. Let's, negotiate peacefully for everyone to be happy. I mean, I'm a middle child. That's what I want, everyone to be happy and be peaceful.
Yeah, I get it.
So
I'm the experimental guinea pig. So to me, it's like, I'm going to step back and watch the others squabble. That's what I do. I just try to remove myself from it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Think how much Americans are stressed out about Ukraine and Russia and Israel, Palestine. And I mean, we're so far disconnected from that. Why are we so worried about it at the same time? Like, we have a lot of problems here that no one talks about. I mean, there's a lot of homeless and people addicted to drugs that it's really sad. And like I just said earlier, the statistic from your book, 80% of people felt they're living without a purpose. I mean, we got a lot of issues here, and I would love to see, at least somebody care about that too. Not to say that the worldly problems. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on in Africa that no one talks about. That
Oh yeah.
really, like you just mentioned that one, but there's a bunch of other stuff that I think that's currently going on that no one's talking about. I mean, I heard a statistic. I don't know if this is legit or if this was fake news, but they said there's more slavery going on in the world now than ever before. But nobody talks about it because it's in other countries and it's under the radar. And, a lot of child slavery, a lot of course products that we are enjoying, like our iPhones and things, are being made by.
Oh yeah, the lithium miners. There's 15,000 people in a pit picking through rocks. What kind of life is that?
Yeah, little kids. I've seen the pictures and videos of that, so I know that some of this is real. It's not.
It's real.
I mean, I don't know what your definition of slavery is, but to me, like a 9-year-old mining is like, I don't think that's like the career choice that they.
But see, we are in this country. Okay, so not to get religious, but the founding fathers believed in God. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. We have an entirely different outlook on human existence than they do in the Congo, because people are throwaways in the Congo. China, throw away your babies. Don't have many babies. And you know what's happening? China's industry and their economy is collapsing because there's not enough people to work. The older people are aging out, and there's not enough young people to take their place. And I think the same thing is Elon Musk warned about the lack of people having children. People are aging out, and so there have to be replacements for them. And that would ordinarily be, and I saw a really amazing documentary about people that choose college education as opposed to trades. And there were times when the families would pass the trades to the second and third generations. But a lot of those people now opted out to go to school, and they ended up with a college degree that now is useless. And the people that would have taken over those trades as others retire aren't there. So, for example, elevator operators, elevator repairmen, they make $100,000 a year, and you can't find anybody to repair your elevator. That's just one example.
Yeah, no, and it is interesting too, because you look at things like the World Economic Forum, they're saying there's too much people and we're destroying the carbon and all this. And it's like, and they want to reduce the population, which is kind of a scary thing to say out loud. And then you've got other people saying, no, we should have more children. I mean, children are great and all this other stuff. So I don't know. It's interesting. I mean, that's the one thing I love about America is, or at least it used to be, is that we had freedom, and we had freedom of choice. Whether you want to have 13 kids or 0, you can do whatever you want. You have the choice. So I don't know if
that the Soviet Union was paying people. I don't remember what, I think it's $10,000 a child to have children. Putin was paying people to have children.
I didn't know that.
Well, yeah, because a lot of the people there, they die of chronic disease. They don't have a God-based society. They have a humanistic-based society. So people think, I just do whatever I want. It doesn't matter. And so a lot more people are, thinning out from the herd. And so now they're paying. It's literally, if you just look it up, Russia paying people to have children. It's there.
Yeah, I believe
it. China, I don't know what China did, but they discarded hundreds of millions of little ones. And so we have a God-based society. We have a God-based society, and based on those higher principles, we have a civil society for the most part.
Now you introduce,
that's right. But see, now you have an invasion of people from other belief systems.
Yeah,
those people from other belief systems, they don't believe the way we do, and so they see a young.
Well, there's a lot of people that were born here that don't believe it's a God-based system. I mean, there's a lot of different viewpoints.
Depends upon the university they went to.
Yeah, well, the universities now are all. That's like its own religion. I feel like it's
absolutely. You're right.
I mean, it's a very different mindset. That's I don't know. The world's definitely changing. It's different from when I was a kid, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is all fascinating stuff. So you have how many books out right now? 18, you said?
I'm working on the next 2 right now. And I have 16 books published right now, all on Amazon, David Masters, or you can find them at my website, escapeyourmindsprison.com. And that was my first book, How to Escape the Prison for Your Mind.
Yeah.
Your mind doesn't need prison. You don't need prison bars when your mind is in prison. We're all prisoners of our own thinking.
Right. Well, I'll put that link in the show notes, and feel free to come back to promote the next book. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you so much, man. This was great. You're a very good interviewer. Yes, good questions.
Thank you. Yeah, this was a lot of fun. We'll be in touch, and I'll get this.
I appreciate you very much, Chuck.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks, David. Bye-bye.
Take care.